You're listening to SM Media, the #1 place for exclusive content.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of All Time 11 right here on SM Media. I'm Scott McPike, delighted to be your host as always. Got a very special guest in this week's episode. I'm joined by the former Hearts, Motherwell, Livingston striker, current manager of Trinent Juniors, Calum Elliot. Calum, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you onto the show. Thanks for joining me.
How you doing?
How's things? How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Surviving. How about yourself?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, obviously Trinent Juniors. Must have been a while since you last played a game.
The last game was the Scottish Cup, so that's been almost like 4 or 5 months now. So it's been quite difficult to like kind of navigate through that time when you miss your like Saturdays with the football, but it's kind of allowed me time to spend with the family, so it's can't really complain.
Definitely. How much do you enjoy management?
No, I love it. Like, to be honest with you, it's not something when I was playing I possibly thought I'd get involved in, but obviously when I had to stop playing as early as I did, it kind of it's allowed me to stay in the game, and it's something that like I do have a passion for, and I want to try and get to the highest level I possibly can.
Brilliant. Obviously you started out at Hearts. What was your kind of early memories coming through there, and who was a kind of good mentor that kind of helped you?
Probably like certainly like as a coach it'd be like John McGlynn. Like he was the one that he was a youth coach at the time, and then he became first team coach when George Burnley took over. So like that transition, like knowing somebody, the coaching staff of the first team definitely helped. But no, like I think like all young players like love their kind of like apprentice days. It's like probably like your most enjoyable days in football. Like when you're sharing memories and being part of like a good youth team, and it can come in through at Hearts. Like we were lucky to kind of like do well as a team, and then at that stage Hearts were always a team that gave young players an opportunity. So obviously I was lucky enough to get it at an early age.
Brilliant. Obviously as well, you spent a bit of time in the Scotland youth set up. How good was that for you as well? And did you kind of feel like you could go and play at that kind of level?
It was like something I hadn't actually played until I started to get involved with the first team. So it was like I think I started playing when I was like 16, and we had a strong team, and we'd done well through like the youth tournaments, and unfortunate not to actually collect like a big trophy. But certainly I was lucky enough to play with some good players in the teams, and some of the players have went on and done really well for themselves.
Brilliant. Well, make a start in your team. You're going for a 4-3-3. You put yourself in that team?
No, definitely not.
And what's obviously the kind of best days? Obviously, your career was at Hearts, but you obviously spent a bit of time at Motherwell and Livingston. Were they good development stages for you as well?
Probably the Motherwell one, not so much. I don't think I was like ready to, probably mentally more than anything, to leave Hearts at the time. I don't think I was like in a good. I was probably mature enough to kind of like get taken out of my comfort zone. That is as crazy as that sounds, but certainly Livingston. I loved Livingston. It allowed me to play every week, and it gave me that. They gave me that opportunity, and it was a good changing room as well. That there's still a lot of boys that I keep in contact with that I played with there. So certainly at Livingston was one that I really, really enjoyed, because it was at that time there was a lot of good players there as well.
Definitely. We'll make a wee start in your team. We'll start off with the goalkeeper. Who have you got in nets for your all-time 11?
Craig Gordon.
Easy choice.
To be honest, at the time, and still is, his top goalkeeper, but he was somebody that he had everything, size. He was athletic, could make big saves in big moments, distribution as well. And at that time when I sort of played with him, he was like very rarely injured. So he's obviously went on and had a great career, but he was somebody that just was like probably at that moment in time when he was at Hearts, probably for me probably one of the best goalies in Britain at the time. Now, and to be honest, I thought he probably might have went on to a bigger club. We left Hearts and went to a bigger club Sunderland.
And what was it about him? Just his like shot stopping. How good a shot stopper was he?
Everything, like shot stopping, like reaction saves, coming for crosses. He could do like absolutely everything. Like size full to go as well. Like very rarely made mistakes. So I can't actually think of any mistakes I actually made at the top of my head. But he'd always like pull off like big saves and big moments, and especially in that time when he had like a good defence in front of him, like that, he was just like outstanding.
Brilliant. We'll move into your defence. We'll start off with your right back. Who have you got in there?
I've got Alan Hutton.
Okay.
Who did you have? Who did you think I'd put?
I thought Robbie Neilson, but I'm
Robbie
quite
Neilson,
surprised Alan Hutton. What was it about Alan Hutton? You just...
he was so athletic, like 1v1, he could get up and down. Again, like it allowed you to kind of, he just like covered that whole side. Like he had absolutely everything. Like he was quick, he was aggressive. Had quality in the final third. And again, he's had a great career. And like he was somebody that there's some players that you play with and just like you're just on another level. He was certainly one.
And could you see him progress? Like obviously, you played with him at youth level. Could you see it like he would go on and be like as good, particularly attacking, as he went on to be?
Well, he was like 2 or 3 years. I think he was like 3 years older than me, but I played with the 21s when I think I was like 17, 18, and like he was like towards the end of his time with the 21s. But he was just, I think he'd played maybe 18, 19 games for Rangers at the time, but it was just incredible. Just like his athleticism, his quality, and he just had absolutely everything. And it did not surprise me in the slightest that he's obviously done so well for himself.
Brilliant. We'll go to the other side. We'll go to left back.
That was probably the toughest one, in fairness, because obviously I grew up with Lee Wallace, who was just a top player. Like I didn't expect him. He just kind of like propelled once he got that opportunity in the first team. Just like really kicked on and done really well for himself. And at the time before that, he wasn't actually playing for the Hearts 19s, and then he got an opportunity due to injuries in the first team, and he took his opportunities, done really well. But it was Takis, Fisas, that left back.
Obviously, what did it do for the team though? When obviously he'd won the European Championships, did it give you a massive boost that season when he came in?
He's just everything, just his like presence in the like day-to-day like changing room, his like training standards, his performances in games, and as well, he was just like a top guy. Like he was, like, despite the fact that he'd done so well for himself, like he had just fitted in like so well with like the rest of the team, and would do anything for you, like literally do anything for you. Which like sometimes when you have a player that's been that successful, you don't really, I think, get that with some boys. But he was just like such a top guy and a top player as well.
Brilliant. We'll move into your centre back. We'll start off with your left-sided centre back.
That would be Andy Webster.
Is that another easy decision?
Webby was just, even he was one guy that probably like as a young player that he just like kind of would always do extra with you, whether that be before training, after training. He'd always like give you, like bits of advice to try and improve you as a player, because obviously he was fairly young at that time as well, but like he was playing for Scotland, and he just like done everything he possibly could to try and help me become a better player, because obviously he knew that like, when I was younger I wasn't like the most like outgoing person. I'm probably still am the most outgoing person, but certainly at that time he'd done everything he could to try and make sure that like I knew that I was part of that team, and would always like go above and beyond to help me. And like honestly, he was a top player, like he aggressive in the air, and he could play with both feet. Again, very rarely made mistakes. Wasn't the quickest, but he just for me, he was just like a top defender.
Brilliant. Who partners Andy Webster on the right side of centre back?
That'd be Elvis.
Yeah,
another like easy one, just like a leader. Like,
was he good with the likes of you? Kind of coming through. Was he good with youth players?
He was good. He was like hard on us, but like, in a good way. He'd tell you if you weren't doing your job properly, but at the same time as well, when you'd done something well, he would support you, and he would do everything he possibly could to improve you. And he had like just ridiculous standards on and off the park, and he would do everything he possibly could to try and improve you as a player and make sure, because he obviously wanted the team to be successful, and he knew that, you know, if you're playing in that team, then he had to get the most out of you, and he would push you, but like in a good way. And that's something that, you know, like when he left the club, that like we didn't have that leader that kind of kept the group together. But no, certainly, you know, like a top player. Wasn't like honestly, he wasn't like the greatest football player, if that makes sense, but just, you know, he made the most of what he had. Like, he never made mistakes, very rarely got caught out of position. But again, just him and Webby as a partnership just were very, very solid.
Brilliant defence so far. Like, obviously, that's like there won't be many goals conceded in that team. We'll move on to your kind of time at Hearts, obviously in the first team. Like, obviously, what was it like when you made your debut?
Well, I made my debut when I was 17. It was against Inverness at home. I think we won 2-1. 2-1, I think it was, and I came on with, I think it was about 35 minutes to go. It was Craig Levine that gave me my debut, and, you know, like, I loved it. Again, I probably wasn't ready like mentally to be playing, but, you know, like certainly the coaching staff felt that I was good enough to play, but like I don't think I was quite ready to deal with all the other stuff that came along with playing in the first team at that moment in time. But no, I loved it. Like, it wasn't something that, you know, like that I would, if I could go back, I would probably like to have more time to develop and probably play more games at youth levels. So then when you get that opportunity, when you're ready to take it and then kick on, rather than sometimes you can get too much too soon. And that's probably was my like biggest like regret. I probably played too much too soon and like stopped developing like my game at like a young age. But, you know, like, you know, I played with some top players at Hearts at that time, and like I was lucky to come through at that time as well, because, you know, there was so much competition, and you know, like to be part of that team as well that won the Scottish Cup was obviously rewarding as well.
See, obviously that the season that George Bully arrived in, obviously the start of that season is well known. It was probably the best start outside Old Firm my team's made in years. But what was the feeling like when George Bully got sacked? Like, what was the feeling in the dressing room for, like, you can remember?
I think it had been coming. I think there had been like whispers, like, like the weeks leading up to that, like everything wasn't right, because obviously we had such a strong start to the season. Like, we were absolutely flying every game that we went into. We believed that we would win, and it was like such a strong squad as well. It was like a proper squad that we had, where like competition all over the pitch. But I think there was a feeling that like that. It wasn't surprising, if I'm being honest, that it did happen. Obviously, you didn't expect it to happen, because obviously the team had been doing so well, but it didn't come as a massive surprise, if I'm being honest, that he had been sacked. Just because obviously that there had been like kind of like rumblings that there was like off the field problems, or like the relationship between Burley and the owner wasn't great. I really don't know what the kind of the issue was, but no, you couldn't argue with this. The start, and obviously it did have a bit of an effect on the team. But like, to be honest with you, when he left, Graham Ricks came in. Like, he was like, for me, probably the best coach that I've ever worked with. He was just like, outstanding. Like, in terms of his training, the way like he spoke to players. Like, for me, like, he was the one that I've like one coach manager that I would say definitely brought the best out of me. And again, like, he was the one that I was like so disappointed that he left. But again, it wasn't surprising when he left, because the results again started to falter, and then obviously Valdas took over towards the end of the season. So it wasn't ideal.
It seemed like the kind of managers are changing it was pretty much like every 6 months, wasn't it? Is it hard to have the confidence like that you're going to kind of keep your place in the team where the managers changing basically every year?
To be honest, I think it was like every 4 or 5 months. It almost got to that stage where it was almost every 4 or 5 months a new manager came in, and then obviously because it was such a big squad, and everybody, when a new manager comes in, different players get opportunities. So sometimes, it would help, and then other times, you'd probably get pushed to the side. But it wasn't ideal. Ideally, you'd like to have one manager in place, but it was never going to happen with it. Mr. Romanoff when he was in charge.
We'll move into your midfield. We'll start. Are you playing like a holding midfielder and a player either side of them? Is that the way you're going to set up?
One sitter and then 2 box to boxes.
Right. Okay. We'll start off with your holding midfielder. Who's in there?
That was, it wasn't a tough one, but it was like one of those ones where he wasn't the best football player, but see, in terms of like covering ground and just doing the jobs that nobody wanted to do and allow like your fullbacks to push on, it would probably be like Julian Braley. Like he was he could hardly pass wind. Genuinely, he could hardly. He didn't technically wasn't like an outstanding player, but just he was like an unbelievable teammate. Just he could do like the horrible jobs and allow like the players in front of him to go and play, because you knew that you always had that protection. Like, it was one of those ones in training where you think, like, wow, like this guy is miles off it. But in games he was like incredible, like unbelievable. And I think he only stayed at Hearts for a season.
Yeah.
I think it was a season he stayed for, but it was just like, unbelievable. Like him and Hartley in midfield just had a great relationship. Like he allowed Hartley to be like box to box and get forwards. I think Hartley scored 17, 18 goals, but that was purely because he had somebody like Julian who played alongside him.
Brilliant. So who plays in the kind of left-sided midfielder position of the 3?
Scott Brown.
Right. Okay. Do you play with him under 21s with Scotland? Yeah.
Aye, like he was kind of obviously on the cusp of like getting involved with the first team, but again, like he had everything. Just he was aggressive, covered ground, and like probably the thing that he could play as well. He was he had, he'd play forward passes. He would. It probably didn't score in it. Like if you look back, he probably didn't score as many goals as what he probably could. But again, like he was a better all-round football player than a lot of people give him credit for. Despite the fact that he's obviously done like ridiculously well for himself, but like he was like a top player. He could do everything.
And did you see, did he have that kind of leadership ability that he's going on to have? Did they have that back then?
He was just like a good person as well. Like where even like for me being one of the younger boys, like being at the 21s at the time, he was always somebody that tried to make you feel part of the group. And he was, and that's not always the case when you go away with Scotland. And like there is the younger boys and older boys that it was quite cliquey. I don't know if that's the case now, but certainly he was somebody that would always try and make you feel part of it. But he was like a top player and a top guy.
Brilliant. Who closes out the midfield? Who's on the right hand side?
Hartley.
Right. Okay.
Who did you have?
I thought I'd Hartley in. I thought Scatchell might have made an appearance as well.
Hartley was just like box to box, like goals. Like a good guy. Again, another one that would go above and beyond to try and help you, like on and off the park. But like that season, I think it was 2005, 2006. He was like unplayable. Yeah, he scored. I think it was like 18, 19 goals as a midfield player, which I don't think many have done since. So, obviously, after that, like there was the situation where he left, which wasn't ideal. But again, he was a top player, like top player.
And do you think that Hearts team lost a bit when the likes of he left and kind of Presley and things like that? Do you think that they lost a lot of that kind of backbone?
Yeah, I think like the core of the group, like Webster, Presley, like Craigie, Hartley, like Braley as well. Like, like they basically all left within like a year, which you're effectively like ripping the spine out your team. So, and to replace them, like they were never going to be able to do, because they effectively some of them had like kind of like outgrown the club. So, like to replace them, especially when like the recruitment at Hearts wasn't that great at the time. We never replaced them, not just as players, but like also like as people as well. Like how much they actually brought to the group and the respect that they commanded off their teammates. That like for them to leave all in that space of time, I don't think the club ever properly recovered from.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We'll touch about on the kind of latter part of your career. The move to Lithuania, and I don't think it's a surprise that you went to Lithuania, but why was it Žalgiris and no Kaunas? Was that ever kind of discussed?
Not like, to be honest, it was nothing to do with Hearts at the time.
Right, okay.
Obviously, I'd been out with for about 18 months. I'd had a microfracture in my knee, so I hadn't played. I went to Dundee on loan for a month, and within a minute of that first game, I had to get carried off because I felt I'd done it again, but it just didn't feel right. I felt as if I needed to go somewhere else and just go and like try and play and like try and experience like something different. And to be honest with you, the first like 4 or 5 months I loved it. Like going somewhere different, and then like I think there was an international break where I came back, and to be honest with you, when I came back, like sometimes when you come back, you realise like when you come home, especially to Edinburgh, it's a beautiful city. Your family's there. What you're kind of missing, and then when I had to go back, I wouldn't say I was homesick, but like there was a lot of like different elements that you missed that you obviously couldn't get there, because obviously the language problem, you couldn't really socialise, which was like one of the main things for going out there, was just to go and like concentrate on playing football. But obviously, you need to live as well, and when you're there, you spent a lot of time obviously by yourself. But again, like I knew that before I went, but when I came home and being able to see your like friends and family, to then going back to just basically sitting in your house by yourself for hours on end, it was pretty difficult. But it was a good life experience. I certainly enjoyed it. I still had another year, but I decided it'd be best for them to cancel my contract.
You come back to Alloa. Was that just a kind of case of getting back and playing as regularly as you could?
Well, I was supposed to when I'd left Žalgiris, I was supposed to go to. I'd went over to Houston in America.
All right. Okay.
I went there for I think it was like 2.5 weeks, where like I'd agreed to sign. So they'd offered me a contract, and then there was like some issues with I think you can only have like 3 like foreign players at the time, that they had to get rid of one to bring me in. And to be honest, I was like too impatient. I wanted to get back playing, and then obviously with Hartley being the manager at Alloa, I just decided that it would be best for me to get back playing. And obviously, looking back, it's one of those ones where you think, well, maybe if I'd just been a little bit more patient, then you could have had the opportunity to play in America, which would have been excellent. But like to go, it was like, to be honest with you, it was one of my most enjoyable like periods I was playing there at Alloa, because like it was a brilliant dressing room, and also you're part of a winning team, and like to be fair, like, the manager was really good with me at the time as well.
And then obviously you go into Raith Rovers, and then obviously you get the knee injury, which kind of ends your career at 28 in 2015. Was it hard to come to terms that the injuries were catching up on you?
I felt probably for even like my first 6 months at Raith, like I started off like quite well, and then I could feel that I had a problem with my hamstring, like top of my hamstring, where it was like I had a fracture at the top of my hamstring, so I couldn't properly run, and we couldn't really get to the bottom of it, and it was just a nightmare. And then at the start of the following season, I had another problem with my knee, which got cleaned up, and then I got back playing, was enjoying it, and then had another injury, and like, to be honest with you, it was just like continually like building up. So you get back fit, break down again, and it was got to the stage where, regardless of what happened, you would have liked to have made the decision yourself. Obviously, the injury which came about, the decision was like kind of like forced on me, that I had to like seriously think about like stopping playing football, and it was quite an easy one, to be honest with you.
We'll close out your team. We'll start off with your left winger. Who you got there?
Rudy.
Right, okay.
Rudy would play there because, again, he wasn't defensively the best player, or it wasn't his first thought. His first thought was always to go forward. And I think if you had somebody behind him, that would allow him that opportunity, but he could stay high. He would play there. He was just like lethal. It was like that left foot was just like an arrow. He wasn't again. Sorry.
Were you surprised even when he came into Hearts? Were you surprised he wasn't like scouted a bit long before that to go to an even bigger club, like even down in England?
I think like it's the start that he had. I think for the first like 3-4 months he was like unplayable.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
he was like unplayable. It was like every single goal, every single game there was a goal. Like he was like strong. He was quick. He would create chances, but like if you got him anywhere near that box, he was just like loading on that goal. And his left foot was just an absolute like arrow. Like I've never seen somebody hit a ball as hard. Like all my days like watching like football, honestly, it was like an absolute rocket.
Brilliant. We'll go to the other side. We'll go to right wing. Who's in there?
Naismith.
Right. Okay. Is that another easy decision?
Aye, like he was again like 21s, but he was somebody that you just knew was like just another level above. He was just like a top player. He could do everything. He could come short, he could go long, he could obviously score goals, and he was somebody that was just, at the time he was still at Kilmarnock, but you just knew like a big move was coming because he was obviously doing well at Kilmarnock, he was doing well with 21s, and obviously he's went on and done really well for himself, which wasn't surprising in the slightest. But like he could do everything. Like he was good in the air, like right foot, left foot. Like maybe it wasn't like the trickiest player in the world, but he had like great movement. Like he could, as I said, he could link the game. He could do absolutely everything.
Brilliant. Final position. Who's the man leading the line? Who's up front?
It was Stephen Fletcher.
Okay.
Just like 21s, obviously the other one. Like it was between him and Jankowskis, but we got, to be honest with you, Fletcher, and again he was probably the best player I played with, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Like he just had absolutely everything. Like he could link. He was, even though he wasn't that tall, he was like unbelievable in the air. And like that 20s team, like the 16s to like 21s, he was that one player that was just that little bit special.
Brilliant. Well, that's a brilliant team. Is there any players you want to kind of give a mention to that just missed out?
Probably Bruno Aguilar.
Okay.
Like, he was a top player, but like, to be honest with you, I don't think he plays in that midfield. But again, he was a top player. Probably again, I was surprised that he didn't probably get a move from Hearts, but obviously he was. I think he went to Cyprus actually after he left Hearts, but he was a top player, but probably didn't score enough goals.
Brilliant. See, obviously, when you stopped playing, was it always a plan to get into coaching?
Not really. It was something that just kind of came about where I stopped obviously playing, and then like there was a team that, like a junior side that wasn't far from where I stayed, and I took that job on, and I was there for about, I think it was about 2 years, and during that obviously time, I started to like get like a real passion for like coaching and managing, more so managing, because I felt as if that's where my like skill set like actually lay, not so much like coaching, but I absolutely love it. Like I got the opportunity there, and then like it got to the stage where I'd done my kind of like B license, but I hadn't done enough kind of like hours as a coach, so I felt as if I needed to like improve as a coach, because obviously like, even though you're a manager, you still have to be able to be like, for me, like a good coach. So like I went to America and Canada for a year, where I'd work with like different age groups, men's teams, girls teams, and like to be honest, I loved it. Just being able, just actually having to like sometimes like teach kids how to do like the fundamentals, and then obviously when you get the opportunity, which I have done, to work with like better teams and better players, I think you find it easier, because you do have that experience where sometimes you have to like talk people through it. And I've been lucky to build myself up and gain experience, and now I feel as if I'm ready to kind of like move up the football and like pyramid. But I also understand the fact that that's only going to come like through me being successful with the teams which I'm like managing, and like I'm at like a brilliant club just now, which are like hopefully going to be like a team which is capable of getting into like the Lowland League and hopefully above that. But like there's obviously a lot of teams at our level that have got that same ambition.
Brilliant. Like obviously like ambition with Trinette and things like that, but can you see yourself going like really far in the game? Like, is that obviously where the ambition is?
Like I think everybody wants to manage and coach at the highest level possible, but I go back to, I think that's only going to be the back of like me being successful with the teams that I'm actually at. And like, for me, I'm at an ambitious club just now, and if anything comes for that in the future, is because like I've been successful as a manager and at the level that I'm actually at. And like for me, I think going back to as a player, looking back, I probably wasn't ready to have the experiences what I had at an early age. So I made like a conscious decision that I had to kind of make sure that when I did get opportunities, that I was ready to take it, and like make mistakes at a lesser level and learn from them, and make sure that you ultimately try and don't make them again. So like that's what I've tried to do, and I'm at I'm a fortunate position where I'm working at a really good club that have got ambitions going on and doing what like effectively like what Kelty have done. But we also understand it's not easy.
Definitely. Calum, it's been an absolute pleasure to be on the show, mate. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks very much for doing it.
No problem at all, anytime.
Pleasure. Thanks very much. Cheers.